Welcome to a football show, Thursday edition, Titans OTA edition. That is Zach Lyons. I am Braden Gall. Good to be here with you guys. If you want to get into the comment section, please, you're welcome. It's open. It's available. Give us a little thumbs up, of course. If you're on Facebook or Twitter, please give us a share as well. So pleased to have all you guys with us. We'll take questions and comments because we're talking OTAs today. Of course, brought to you by Sinkers Beverages and the Kingston Group. Derek, good afternoon to you as well. There we go. Derek, getting things started. Do appreciate it. If we'll have time for some questions today, so if anybody wants to jump into the comments and ask some questions today, we will. Of course, what's Kale talking about there? Oh,
there's a sex video out of our quarterback one.
Oh, okay. Scouts weren't lying about
two video clips.
Oh, really? So this is a family program, sort of. I have spent the last few hours with nothing but kindergartners and first graders, so I am unawares of what you're talking about.
Well, Gia Duddy had leaked a little video of QB1.
Okay. All right. There we go. The real headline, the real topic, according to Stoney, getting right to it. All right. So we're going to talk OTAs. A lot of stuff to talk about. Sinkers Beverages, of course, before we do that.
Hog talk. No hog talk today.
No hog?
No hog
No.
talk.
Well, I don't look, considering the start to the show, I don't think we need to talk about meat. Okay. I just don't think so. I don't think we need to talk about meat.
No ham candle talks. Just,
Are you guys done already with this? Stoney, can you ban someone from the comments? Is that possible to ban someone from the comments? I can ban you, Stoney. I don't think I have that power, actually. Sinkers Beverages, 3 consecutive years, liquor store of the year in Nashville, Tennessee. So please go shop at Sinkers. They got every single thing you could possibly need for a good Memorial Day get-together, good Memorial Day barbecue, good Memorial Day party. Go hang out, and of course they'll take care of you. Anything you got going on, bourbon, wine, champagne, beer, non-alc stuff, THC stuff, you name it. They've got a great selection, lots of flavors, lots of expertise. The big giant walk-in beer fridge is what you're going to need this weekend if it's hot. So make sure you check out Sinkers Beverages this weekend, as well as Bluegrass if you're north of town in the Hendersonville area. Of course, proud sponsor of football and other F words. Stackintheinbox.com, of course. You can sign up there for good Titans coverage. The Paul Kaharski podcast coming up immediately after this one. You can check him out, over on his YouTube.
I wonder if he'll talk about the video.
I can't imagine that he will. All right. And then, of course, Kingston Group, buildkg.com. Remember the name. That's all you got to do. You don't need to run out today and do anything with your house probably, but there's going to come a time where something's going to happen and you're probably going to need something with your house. And that at that moment, right then and there, Zach, is when you need to remember the name, the Kingston Group, because you don't need it today. You may not need it tomorrow. You may not need it next month, but there will come a time where you need to buy, sell, or fix something at your house. And Kingston Group is the name. You just need to keep it right up there in the old noggin, in the old dome. Just keep it there. Otherwise, we're going to talk Titans OTAs and nothing else. We're not talking about anything else.
We're just going to be talking about Will Levis slinging it. That's what we're talking about today.
That's exactly what we're talking about.
We're going to let it all hang out today about Titans OTAs.
Like a skinny post is what you're saying? He was throwing skinny posts?
Yeah, no, I would say that Will Levis is a deep dig.
Oh, God. Well, Brian Callahan was telling them to make sure those benches were short. Just make sure that the benches were short. I am not going to Google this while I'm on the air. I'm not going to do it. I refuse. All right, I'm going to start with I have no notes today. This is all just like, what did we see and what do we want to know and what do we think is interesting about Titans practicing on Tuesday? We did not get to see anything else. Got to talk to a handful of players. But so we're going to kind of go all over the place today, but I want to start with and DeAndre Hopkins talked about this a little bit after practice, that this could be the best room he's ever played with in terms of wide receivers. And I watched them pretty closely in the first. That was the group that I was really focused on, and obviously wanted to see Calvin Ridley, wanted to see sort of Traylon Burks, wanted to see Jaquan Jackson, wanted to see Tyler Boyd. A lot of new pieces, a lot of different types of pieces, and the drills were different. Callahan was with them the entire time. during individual drills. He wasn't really working with any other group of players. He was with the receivers and almost the entire time. And the number one takeaway on the field, Calvin Ridley, pretty damn fast, different first 3 steps than everybody else. I don't think I need to go into more detail than that. He's just really talented. And but off the field, not off the field, but like as an individual, the thing that stood out to me, Zach, was just how engaged he was at all times. Now, is that every practice? Is that just OTAs? Is that just because it's install, because it's a new team, a new coach? I don't know. But this is a guy that was constantly talking to Traylon Burks, constantly talking to DeAndre Hopkins, constantly talking to Brian Callahan, constantly talking to Will Levis, just asking questions, talking through routes, talking through technique, clearly acting like a real student of his position, a craftsman, if you will. And just the engagement, I thought, was the thing that really stood out, because nobody else was. Tyler Boyd didn't do any of that. He may not need to, but Calvin Ridley was super, super engaged with Brian Callahan specifically on how he wants him to run particular routes. That's my first big takeaway from Ridley.
Well, it makes sense, right? Because everything that we've heard from his time in Jacksonville was he didn't feel like he was used right. There was a lot of miscommunication. There was a lot of just kind of like one-trick pony kind of deals, and that's kind of like why everybody in Jacksonville wanted him back, but then once he signed elsewhere, they're like, oh, he sucks, so we don't want him back. But so it makes sense that he's engaged, right? It makes sense that he is learning from DeAndre Hopkins, who he does train with even before now. He has trained with DeAndre Hopkins over the summers. And it's interesting that he's taken on this role because obviously he's the highest paid member of this wide receiver room. He's here for at least 2 to 3 years. So it makes sense that he is stepping into a leadership role, and he probably has a lot of insight to give. He learned from Julio Jones. And now he gets to kind of be what a slightly younger version of what Julio Jones was supposed to be. But he's obviously a lot quicker off the line, because you're right. Even in the camp videos, and not to overreact to camp videos, but even in the camp videos, you can clearly see that he is the fastest wide receiver off the line. Like, clearly. It doesn't matter who it is. It doesn't matter what drill they're running. He is the fastest guy. And typically in OTAs, you kind of see guys kind of like, gallop around or feel their way out. He's just like full force, 100%. And I think it's a good sign of things to come, especially that he is going out of his way to talk and be close to Brian Callahan and Will Levis, which those are the 2 most important people to be close to when you are the de facto number 1 wide receiver. You could say that DeAndre Hopkins is your number 1 wide receiver, but really it's Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley is your number 1 wide receiver on this team.
Yeah, it's like DeAndre Hopkins is number 1 in mentality, but like Ridley is number 1 in like pure talent right now. Like Hopkins at the end of his career. Like the way he throttles through breaks is just different too. And I will say this, Jackson's breaks are really impressive. Like he gets in and out of, like they were doing a lot of inside outside routes where it's a really hard route to run, where you have to, you sort of run that, like you're faking like you're running a 3-yard out route, right? And then you put the foot in the ground, squat, and come back in, where you're changing complete opposite directions. It's a very tricky drill to run unless you're very quick. And like Jackson was like smoking Tyler Boyd on that route. Like Tyler Boyd didn't run it as fast as Jackson was running it. So Jackson very quick as well.
Well, to be fair, that should be the case, because Quan Jackson is known for his speed and acceleration, whereas Tyler Boyd never really was known for that.
Right. So Jackson was quick. He stood out from like an in and out of breaks, like short space agility for sure. But no, Ridley was the guy that we were all watching. Traylon Burks as well. I'm keeping an eye on him, and the room is very interesting because it feels like you have a lot of options in the slot. It feels like you have a lot of options on the outside, and then you got this Traylon Burks guy who, if it all clicks for him and falls into place, could be a very versatile piece that they use in a variety of ways, as Brian Callahan has talked. But the room itself, like, and we'll get to this in the other direction and a few other positions, like there's certain position groups now that I'm just not concerned about. Corner, I am not concerned about corner, and I am not concerned about receiver right now. Maybe next year we have a different conversation.
Which is a total opposite of how everybody has felt like for 3 years. It feels like.
Bingo. Now, offensive line, I also am less concerned, but we'll get to that in a second. But there's a few other positions where I'm just like, I know it's OTAs. I know not everybody's here, but my goodness, this is what they're going to run out there. So we'll get to that in a second. But receiver is not one of them. They've got every different piece. They were really. We'll get to 7-on-7 here in a second, but they kind of have every type of player you want. And then there's like NWI. He just can like do anything, and he's like your sixth guy if you want him to be. So
he could do anything. Is a little.
I didn't say extremely well. I said he can play every. He could be your third tight end. We were talking about this on the sideline. I wonder if they're going to use Traylon Burks in creative ways, like put him into different formations and use him because he's so big. You don't want Traylon Burks inline blocking on any particular play. You know who'd be better at that? Nick Westbrook-Akine. Like Nick Westbrook-Akine would be better at being like a third tight end. You motion him into the backfield like an offset and then have him block down. So
I mean, there's a difference
better than
between
Burks.
Westbrook-Akine. Well, I think the idea is just ludicrous altogether, but the idea that either of those guys can be an inline blocker on a defensive end is laughable.
No. I'm thinking more like a rolled up safety on like an outside pitch play or a screen pass and again, I'm talking very isolated situations. The key to having Burks or NWI or anybody else in that third tight end position on the field, it's really just a receiver position, is to force the defense to match up with you because they can threaten you in other ways. But anyway, that was just a conversation we were having. The point,
NWI and threaten really don't go together.
Fine. The point is they're very versatile. They have every piece of the puzzle in that position group.
No, it's a very good wide receiver room. And Stoney yesterday on Football and Other F Words on Wednesday, he said that Traylon Burks is this team's Deebo Samuel. He will be just as good as Deebo Samuel, and he'll get like 900 or 1,000 yards, all-purpose yards, because he'll be used in a variety of different ways. And I do think though that when you watch Brian Callahan talk about Traylon Burks, whether it's been in front of the media, been on the radio, or at Bussin' with the Boys, there is just this, thing about talking about Traylon Burks that he loves talking about Traylon Burks. Is exactly like when Mike Vrabel used to light up whenever anybody asked about Jack Gibbons. Oh, who's this Jack Gibbons guy? Well, we call him Dr. Gibby and blah, 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 blah. We just love him. Vrabel had those players where he just lights up.
Yep.
And I feel like at this point, the Traylon Burks hate has been warranted. However, I think that there is a clean slate opportunity here. And even Brian Callahan talked about this on Bussin' with the Boys, was like the fact that there's really no pressure on Traylon Burks right now. And there has been pressure these last 2 years. And they I'm looking at Traylon Burks' year this year is that this is a rookie year for him. And whether you guys want to consider that fair or not, I really don't give a shit. But it is, to me, a rookie year. Now, if he does not look good, obviously, then you're like, you're good. We're done with Traylon Burks. But I think they feel that when they look at Traylon Burks, they see a guy with untapped potential, unmatched athleticism. And that's something that DeAndre Hopkins talked about, right? DeAndre Hopkins said that he's the most athletic guy here. I think that they view he's an under the radar project. He'll be our wide receiver sub in guy for the outside. He'll be the first guy for the slot, maybe with Jaquan Jackson mixed in there. But we are going to develop him behind the scenes, get him acclimated, teach him how to be a pro because he was a discarded toy from the previous regime. We're going to teach him all this stuff, coach him up, and then next year he could be the wide receiver 2 outside of Calvin Ridley. I really think that's the plan. Now, if you're asking me whether I believe that the plan will come to fruition, pump the brakes. But that's what I objectively think of the Traylon Burks situation, and I think that you're 100% correct. You have 3 guys that fit in clear roles, right? You have Calvin Ridley, you have DeAndre Hopkins, you have Tyler Boyd, and then you have Traylon Burks, who could fill in all those positions if he needs to be. You have NWI, who also can fill on all 3 positions if needed to be. And then you have other slot-specific guys like Jaquan Jackson and Kyle Phillips that can fill in for Tyler Boyd if need be. Yep. But you have all this. This is the strongest wide receiver room that has clear vision behind it, right? Every move, every player has a clear vision and a clear purpose. And I think that makes everything so much easier when you're trying to analyze this team and try to provide information. This is clearly and really this is a whole top-down thing. It's like, everything seems so much clearer about this team. Like the plan. What is the plan? What is the vision? Who are your key guys? Who are the guys that play on the outside? Also at the quarterback position, how does the depth work there? Who's going to be at safety? Still a little bit of a question mark. But I do think that they kind of like this edge group right now. It kind of feels like they maybe changed their tune from the owners meeting to now. It kind of feels like they like this edge group a little bit more than what maybe they should, but it feels like they do.
What's interesting about, and I agree with kind of everything you laid out for Burks, and even maybe it's just master of the obvious, but sort of reiterating. But I agree, like he was under pressure because the team needed Traylon Burks to be more than he was capable of or hurt. But also, like,
we're ready to be.
Right. But here's the other thing that's kind of unfair to him, and that is the fan base tying him directly to A.J. Brown, because you can't not tie him to A.J. Brown because they were correlated moves. And, oh, by the way, and I did this too, like the scouting report on him, he's a very similar built player to A.J. Brown. So, like, it's not fair for him to come in and be like, hey, like this is not only do you have to fill in for A.J. Brown, but you're going to fix all of John Robinson's problems, and you have to be a starting number 1 wide receiver and then a number 2 wide receiver.
And also your coach hates you.
And right. And again, the hit against Philadelphia to the head is just unlucky. Like that's just unlucky. So he does need to prove a lot, but I agree he should feel absolutely no pressure and should just feel like incredibly light. So it'll be interesting to watch. The other thing real quickly on Ridley, like he reminds me of Julio Jones, like a smaller version of Julio Jones. He's not as tall and he's maybe not as thick, but he runs very similarly to Julio Jones, coached by the same guy in college, obviously. But he reminds me of like a slightly shorter, skinnier version of Julio Jones, who I think and honestly, I think he's got a better burst off the line. Not that Julio in his Titans days, but Julio in his prime, even back when he was with Atlanta. So the wide receiver group and the fact that Brian Callahan spent literally the entire individual drills with that group, I think shows you what he's focused on. I think it shows you he's excited. It shows you that the new pieces are trying to mesh. It's kind of all obvious stuff, but I thought it was really fun because we couldn't quite hear everything he's saying because we're not close enough, but you could catch some stuff when he's working on back shoulder fades and stuff. Like you could really see how engaged Brian is with that position and how they were with him. And that was just from a football nerd standpoint, it was fun to watch those guys work. So I think there's going to be some big payoff for Will Levis. Now, 7-on-7 was interesting. I thought Will Levis looked pretty darn good. Malik Willis, we can get to that, but Malik Willis was not good at football. And I'm not sure what his future honestly is. I really don't know. I know he was a backup for a time, but like I keep thinking like, what a long, strange.
I thought maybe third quarterback because of the new rule that he could sneak on this team as the third quarterback. But if this report already out of the gate is that he's poo-poo, it may be not
my official scouting report, by the way.
You don't want to say poo-poo?
But he had one really great throw in 7-on-7 that was like between this and between that. But like it's the same stuff. Like he's running around taking too much time. Like it's the same stuff that we've seen him work on for you. And it's like what a long, strange journey he's been on in such a short period of time to go from third string to second string to third string. Like he really has just been third string forever. And it's just I know he was backing up Tannehill there for a couple of games, but like he's
always the third best quarterback, regardless of if he's actually quarterback too. Since he's been drafted. And I hate it for him. I was kind of hoping that maybe this new offense install would actually benefit him, a good offensive coach, good quarterback coaches and all this stuff. But I've seen a few people already say that Malik is not making the team even before your OTA thing. And I'm like, well, no, I mean, I could see him making the team because of the new quarterback rule where you can keep 3, have an emergency quarterback. But at this point, if you're down to your quarterback 3 and it's
you're in trouble. You're in trouble.
Might as well just run someone out there that played quarterback in high school. Like at this point, like it just doesn't.
If you're down to your third quarterback, you don't want to win games at that point. Probably. This is exactly right. And everyone says this to a person as well. Malik, really, really nice guy. Just not great at football, NFL football. He was very good in college. So 7-on-7 gave me 2 very different perspectives. because not many, and we can talk kind of all at one here, Zach, if you got questions. Like the defense was so not what it's going to be that it's hard to analyze the defensive 7-on-7. Maybe a couple of nice plays, but like really Will Levis was very good and the offense was very good. And so that's partly the offense and the talent and the upgrade and Callahan and et cetera, Levis being in his first year and all this other stuff. But also it's because like I would say 90%, 80% of the defense like wasn't out there as a starting unit. So just a lot of guys not out there. It's hard to really gauge what the defense will look like, other than the holes at linebacker and at safety are just very real. There's just not a lot of depth, not a lot of talent yet at those positions. So,
Kenneth Murray was practicing on the side field, so that was reported widely out there. So that you would assume that Cedric Gray would have stepped in and been running with the ones and 7-on-7s. Was that the case?
I'm not sure how much I'm allowed to say, but this seems silly because there was a lot of rotation. But like, here's what I will say: of the projected 11 starters for the Tennessee Titans that I think are pretty obviously projectable into Week 1's game, I think I counted Amani Hooker, Roger McCreary, and Chidobe Awuzie, and that was it. That was it.
Okay.
That I would
guys
project
know about my Cedric Gray question, everybody. So again, it is day 2 of OTAs, the first day of media availability for you guys. So day 1 could have been totally different when none of us were out there to see it. And yesterday could have been the same thing if they practiced yesterday. I'm not sure. I know they have an off day probably at some point, but so not to overreact, but it makes you curious as to why, certain players weren't out there on 7-on-7s when they could use the reps. Maybe they're working on something else, and maybe they have an entirely different game plan as far as how the practice goes for rookies, for other players, than what we're used to seeing, because we're used to seeing, okay, 7-on-7s, if you're with the ones, you're the starter. More than likely, you are leading the pack. And maybe that's not the case with this regime, which may be a good question next time there's media availability. It'd be like, how do you pick, or what are you guys looking for? Is it just a constant rotation? You'll probably just get coach speak, but it could be worth a shot. But I do find it interesting because I have heard other people view Will Levis's performance in 7-on-7s through a less than stellar lens because he was missing throws, and this is essentially the second string defense or third string defense with all the injuries out there. So I am glad to hear that you at least thought he looked pretty good. And there's a gel time, right? I mean, he's not perfectly comfortable yet, but if he's making more wow throws like the catch where only Josh Wiley could get it, which would be a good discussion to head into next, is Josh Wiley in the tight end room. But if he's still making those wow throws and taking the easy throws in front of him, I think that's what they're wanting him to work on, by the way. And I don't know if this is what they did in 7-on-7s, but really seems like they really want to put an emphasis on Will Levis to make the easy throws in his reads and progressions when they're open. Because they want to get processed. We talked about. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
they want him processing fast. No, I don't think it was great, but like I was also, to your point, I was like I was watching it all through the lens of like, all right, this isn't training camp. Like it's just, look, this is the first day that we've been able to watch, and it's a new coach with a new bunch of receivers, new running backs. Like the whole thing is new, and he's never been the number 1 quarterback going into OTAs before. So this is really technically his first time as a starting quarterback. So I just was sort of watching it with like very like, all right, let's see. And again, everything we know about Will Levis was there. He does look like he's a little bit, he's even more in shape, I would say. He looks like he's in really good shape. So I wouldn't say it was great, but I did not come away with it going like, man, I don't know. The Wiley throw over the middle had some touch on it, which is really nice. And then he did throw a lot of checkdowns too, which I think, to your point, was important. And I think they were clearly working on that with him. But I didn't come away from it thinking, oh, that guy's in trouble. The way the very next guy steps up and and you're kind of like, oh, okay, that guy's not gonna. I don't know if that guy's gonna make the team, like the way Malik Willis would do. So it's just very different. And the receiving core is super fun to watch. Like they're just fun to watch with Levis. Otherwise, we can go to Wiley here. Unless you let's stay with the thing that I felt the thing I feel about the receiving core is the opposite of how I feel about the safety and linebacker position.
Okay.
I look at the receiving core and I go, this feels pretty good. This feels comfortable. It feels right. It feels like you said, there's a plan and they've put it in place and everybody has a role and it feels organized and makes sense. The middle of the defense behind Jeff Simmons and Devondre Sweat, I don't know. There's a lot of pieces missing, and not just because who started.
I think they have to be trying to figure out what they have behind. Here's my theory as to why maybe certain players were playing with the 7-on-7s that maybe shouldn't be in the first string, right? I'm trying to help you out and dance around it and not getting you in trouble. But I think they're trying to figure out what they got.
I agree.
Because I think you can only really kind of figure out what Chance Campbell is, Jack Gibby, the other guys, because you kind of know what you got in James Williams. You kind of know what you got in Cedric Gray. And Kenneth Murray, of course, you have a defined role for him. So you're kind of trying to figure out what you got. And so I think those guys may be getting reps in OTAs to kind of see, like, in that break between OTAs and training camp. Okay, do we need to go sign a linebacker? Which is more than likely going to be yes, regardless of if you tried this out anyway. Because, I mean, you kind of know what Chance Campbell is, Jack Gibbons is. You know what the depth is behind Cedric Gray, James Williams, Kenneth Murray, and Otis Reese, which should be your de facto 4 linebackers. So you're kind of really trying to figure out, what is Luke Gifford? Can he do more than just play special teams? What's Chance Campbell? Can he fill in? Is there a spot for him on the back end of the roster? And I kind of feel like that's what OTAs is for. Not only the problem that I have, though, is that this is also install, right? I mean, this is sort of like your deepest participation in install before you get into training camp. And yes, they have, like, I think 10 days of OTA, so you miss one day. It's
a lot of time. Yeah.
But for James Williams and Cedric Gray, you need all the reps you can get, and I feel like you need all the reps you can get at one. But again, it's just one day. We don't know what the rest of OTAs look like.
I will say, James Williams is going to be fascinating to track through camp. He stands out.
I told you.
He stands out on the field. He's got a lot of work to do. He needs a lot of polish, but he stands out, and a lot of people were talking about James Williams.
I told y'all that was like my big prediction, is that everybody's gonna be like talking about James Williams because he just looks the part and he'll make the flashy plays, and everybody's just gonna love James Williams. Because I said, like, as a rookie minicamp, like the first day, Joe Rexrode, after I'd said that, Joe Rexrode is like on the radio going, "Hey, James Williams, he's fast." He looks great.
Here's the thing about James Williams, though. They're gonna need to teach him how to throttle down.
Yeah.
Which we've talked about this a lot, where, like, it's better to have the go for it mentality and then teach someone to back off a little bit than to have to try to teach someone to go as fast as, like, I think there's going to be a few special teams penalties in his future. This is what I'm projecting for James Williams. But I think that's part of his growth and learning process that's going to be there, because I do think there's lots of it. Again, you're not the number one safety prospect in the nation coming out of high school if you're not very, very talented and very athletic. And he is even standing next to Cedric Gray, he's on the field. Like, he's just different size player and can move. It's an interesting, like, safety is the one, like, Elijah Molden was on the side with Kenneth Murray as well as Jarvis Brownlee. And it's just like, well, now what are they going to do at safety? It's like, dude, y'all got to go. Like, linebackers, there's bodies there that have played, that are special teams, that have some potential. There's some young guys. Like, there's stuff there, at least. There's nothing there at safety. Like, Mike Brown, Shaheem Carter, like, what are we, like, it's just not. There's nothing.
And then there's the kid from TSU or TCU whose name escapes me right now. Who's an undrafted free agent that they gave pretty big money to. And he has real Geno Stone vibes. And I'm not saying that he's going to turn into Geno Stone, but like if you look at the athletic profile, the size profile, and the stat profile of Geno Stone coming out of college as an undrafted free agent, and what this kid did, and I still can't remember his name. There's something there to that guy. But at the end of the day, you're right. I mean, they got to have first off, Elijah Molden's got to stay healthy. If they do not sign Marcus May or Justice Simmons, and I do not understand what the holdup is, because you figured you'd want them in there earlier than later, and you figure with Denard Wilson, you could at least get Marcus May for cheap, right? Like, surely someone could talk him into coming. I don't know what's going on with that, but the safeties. I'm a little surprised. We're still waiting on safety. Like, we're still waiting. And again, maybe this is a kind of a thing where they're like, what can we get away with at safety? Because safety is not as important. Do we have enough at safety? Because what are we going to be able to do? And I don't agree with it again, but maybe that's what they're trying to figure out. See if one of these guys will step up.
Well, I would say there's more options at safety, quality options still available for them to go solve the problem. Right. There's less at linebacker on the free market right now, but I also think they have more at linebacker in general. So I just think right now you've got Amani Hooker, and that's kind of it, because you're not really sure what I think that Elijah Molden can play safety. But like, again, he's been hurt a lot of his career. And so they need another body on the back end. It's pretty obvious. Yeah. There. And again, so just looking at the 7-on-7, you're just like, what are we doing here? Yeah. And I completely agree with you. It is a new staff trying to learn as much as they can about their current players. I think that's exactly what they're trying to do. You have to feel like they know at least strengths and weaknesses of a player like Cedric Gray and James Williams. Like, you drafted them. Like, you should know sort of some of the things you're dealing with. You may not know as much about a fifth or sixth or a free agent from the previous regime. So I can get on board with that. Tight ends.
Yeah, I think
it's another
the tight end kind of ties into. I like the tight end room. And maybe I'm in the minority, but I like the tight end room because there's nothing better on the market. There's nothing good on the market. Let's be honest here. You're stuck with the tight end room that you have, but I do think it's a really good tight end room. And we talked about it yesterday on Football and Other F Words on Wednesday. Was we kind of feel like, and I don't really know if Stoney actually agreed or not, but me and Mike were kind of on this page where we know that the Tennessee Titans will likely want to run multiple plays out of one look, one personnel setup or whatever. Josh Wiley's the guy that gives you that. He's the guy that can block. Yep. He's the guy that can go out there and catch up the seam. We kind of really like Josh Wiley tight end one, where we're starting to push that narrative out there. And Chig is kind of like your gadget tight end. He's your pass catching tight end that can do it all. And he can kind of block, and so he doesn't tip your hand too much, but like Josh Wiley's that guy. But we also talked about yesterday, Braden, about how the run game has been a little under the radar, especially because we talked about it on Monday, but we didn't really dive really deep into it, about how Brian Callahan said Bill Callahan is essentially the run game coordinator, which is kind of like, okay, yeah, we offensive line coaches typically are. Sometimes you have a separate guy, but this is your run game coordinator. He's designing the run game fits and all this kind of stuff, which led me to think today was like, I bet Bill Callahan is spending a lot of time with the tight ends, because if he's the run game coordinator and designing the run blocking fits, he's going to have to coach and teach what he's looking for and shore up the blocking skills of this tight end room. And Nick Vanette, he's pretty good at blocking tight end, but like, talk about a player that really benefits from Bill Callahan that we haven't really talked about are the tight ends, Chig and Josh Wiley. And I'm kind of trumpeting. I'm standing. This is the one rare time that me, Mike, and Stoney will probably all agree, and that is Josh Wiley tight end one.
I might put myself into and make it a four banger.
Let's do it.
Because I don't necessarily disagree. I don't think Chig gives you the down the seam size that you need, that Josh Wiley gives you. And honestly, I think Wiley, they both have like pretty good athleticism. But Bill Callahan was absolutely working with the tight ends for a large portion of individual drills, and a lot of it was obviously working on the blocking and alignment. But if Nick Vannett is, I think he was the third tight end, and I think he was,
which makes sense.
And I think he was the first one in. Like, and then you have, it's like Nick Vannett and a UDFA are like the guys that are filling in for Wiley and Chig. You don't have a lot of depth there either. That's a major, that's also a major question in terms of depth as well. Safety, linebacker, tight end are the three I came away with going like, they got some holes to fill. But I agree with you. Having Bill Callahan, the ripple effect of Bill Callahan will help the tight ends in a big way. And this is, and I texted you this as well, but I think this is really an interesting trend in college football, where you're starting to see lots of high-end programs, big-time programs. They want their offensive line coach to also have some sort of play-calling background, or even like head coaching background, the way Bill does, because they want them to do exactly what you're talking about, which is to be more in charge of the run game and to call some of those, like, when's the right play, when's the right time to call this particular run play, or that, is it outside zone, is it inside these crack sweeps that everybody's running, right? Like they want, a lot of big time programs are hiring coaches that have experience calling plays and to be the offensive line coach. And I think it's a small thing, but I think it's something that, it's a luxury for this particular organization and for Brian Callahan to have not just a person he knows so well, but a person who's got that kind of experience essentially designing the running game, half of your offense, or let's call it 40% of the offense.
Yeah, I'd say 40% is probably right.
Yeah, you don't want to be 50-50.
Yeah, you talk about just an under the radar topic is just how we talk about what he does for the offensive line, Bill Callahan, but we don't really talk. We tend to forget the intricacies of what is actually taught to players and who it's taught to sometimes when we go through this stuff. And blocking, if you're designing the run game, like last year, Justin Otten was the run game coordinator, so he probably helped Jason Hotelling teach the blocking to, the various forms of the people out there, the players out there. But this year, it's Bill Callahan, and Bill Callahan, first off, Justin Otten learning underneath Bill Callahan is a pretty big deal for him personally, what he goes on to do from here, because Justin Otten, you guys got to remember, was a hot name for offensive coordinator at one time for his work in Denver. Now he's got Bill Callahan. He's learning some stuff from Bill Callahan, but also you got Josh Wiley, Chig Okonkwo. You got Nick Vannett. All those guys learning from Bill Callahan is massive. And if you're talking about Bill Callahan being involved in the run game, that means he's also probably talking to Tyjae Spears and Tony Pollard. And it's just that ripple effect of having him there. We only really view it through the lens of the offensive line. But I think that now that we know that he's part of the run game, which should have probably already been like information.
Right.
But the fact that it's cemented in stone and what it does for the rest of this team is it's tremendous. It's really a big opportunity for all these young players to learn from some of the best and be able to help take their careers to that next level, not just the offensive linemen.
And we can go to the offensive line if you want to, because I think the left side of the offensive line just feels so different. It just feels different. Like when Peter Skoronski last year was easily the largest player on the left side of the line, and now he is the smallest, next to Cushenberry and Latham.
And he's put on weight.
And like that trio looks really good. Like, again, we're talking OTAs, we're talking walkthrough. There's a different presence there from those three on the left side of the line than there was last year. And so it's interesting. And I know, I think PK is going to talk about this on his show coming up, but I think what's interesting is what are the things we've talked about so far, how different the wide receiver room is, how different the cornerback room is, how different the quarterback room is, how different the coaching staff is, how different the offensive line feels and looks, how different the safety room is without Kevin Byard starting as your leader and your vocal guy back there, like at the start of last year. The linebacking room is a bunch of new face. Like, it's just so much new. It's so much new stuff. And they've got the learning curve is going to have to be fast, and it's going to have to be steep if they want to can like actually put it all into and create winning, like actual wins, it's going to take they're going to have to move quickly, and they got a lot of work to do because it's so different. Some of it for the better. I think the offensive line looks better. I think the receiving core looks way better, and the cornerbacks look way better. So as expected, they invested a lot in the offseason. So the offensive line looks.
Well, I think it's good that for the most part, the offensive line is there. I think it's great that all the wide receivers are there. Your quarterback is there. Everybody's healthy. Everybody's working together. That will help accelerate some of that because usually
both tight ends, both running backs.
So. Yeah, everybody. I mean, pretty much the offense is largely healthy. Like largely the offense that you guys saw on Tuesday is what you're going to see on Sundays.
I think MPF
that
is the
seems
only
very
one.
new. Yeah, well, MPF and Jalen Duncan were missing.
Yep.
And they're both in battle for the right tackle spot. And I think it's interesting about who is starting, who got the majority of the snaps while they were gone. And I think that's a big question because everybody assumes that it's like Leroy Watson and then Dylan Radins is your probably getting the lion's share of the right guard stuff. But I mean, people got to remember Sadiq Charles is there. Daniel Brunskill's there. Yeah, John Ojukwu is there. So, I have a couple of questions about the offensive line. How did the right guard, right tackle rotation work? But also, can you tell us who was backup center? Did they even put in a backup center?
That's funny because we talked about that, and now I can't remember who it was. So here's what I would say specifically about the offensive line. I think the right side of the offensive line is far more in flux from a starting situation than maybe we anticipated. It's all basically the same names that you would imagine. It's Sadiq Charles and Dylan Radins and NPF and Jalen Duncan and Watson, the guy they traded for, and then John Ojukwu. I would put him in that conversation as well. But I think what they're doing is they are going to let the cream rise here. Like this is just my opinion. I'm not reporting this or talk to anybody about it, but I think it's basically wide open. Brunskill as well. I didn't mention him. I should have. I think it's wide open, and I think they have two spots that they're trying to find the best two players for, and I think they're gonna put somebody in there that wins reps. So I think both jobs are open more so than I think people thought going into camp. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's Daniel Brunskill and MPF, and we just didn't get a chance to see him because MPF wasn't around, or they wanted to see other players or whatever. But my instinct is that they feel pretty comfortable at the left side. Center to left tackle is pretty set, and that the right guard and the right tackle spot are come get it, boys. Who wants it?
Would you say that John Ojukwu saw a lot of reps with the first team?
I think John Ojukwu is absolutely in the mix to put himself in a position to try to possibly maybe win himself a spot on the team.
Did you see a lot of Dylan Radins on the field?
Dylan Radins was standing on a football field, yes.
Okay. You guys read between the lines of what I'm trying to get out of Braden.
Dylan Radins was, in fact, standing on the football field.
So would you say that he lived up to the hype? Because I don't know if you saw it yesterday. There are now people that are taking the Dylan Radins San Francisco game to all new levels of hype. And now he's gone from making Nick Bosa move to the opposite side in that fabled left tackle game against San Francisco in 2021. 2022, 2021.
Time is a flat circle.
Yes, time's a flat circle. And now he's for making a move to not allowing any pressures and any sacks, even though that is 100% false, is an unequivocal lie.
I mean, here's the thing.
Would you say that he lived up to the hype of being the almighty, all-powerful Dylan Radins on Tuesday, or was he kind of like just chilling? Was he just vibing on the sideline?
He's just vibing. I think he was he was in the rotation, just like all these guys were. And I think it's really hard to handicap based on one practice in May.
Yeah.
What the actual pecking order will be. So I think Radins, if you're asking me like betting odds on these players starting, right?
Yeah.
I think I would move Ojukwu and Charles up in the betting odds.
Okay.
And I might move Brunskill, Radins, and MPF down and just make it a little bit more balanced. That's all.
I like it. Okay.
I still think if I had to guess, I still think Brunskill and MPF is your right guard and your right tackle. But ultimately, coming away after practice, watching the rotations, I think that it's a closer battle than we anticipated, than I anticipated, potentially, and that I think they're going to challenge all of them. I think
you got to be available if you're NPF, because I mean NPF is not so good that he can miss practices.
I agree.
And just slide right in.
I agree, and I think Bill Callahan is challenging all of them to rise to become a starter. Like, who can do your job the best? And honestly, that's a good thing, because right now, in my brain, I don't worry at all about anything else on the line, and that's the first time I've said that in a long time. Like, it may not work for J.C. Latham or Peter Skoronski or Lloyd Cushenberry, but it's set. It is what it is. Like, we're not moving. We're not moving off those three. They look the part. They have the talent, the pedigree for two of them being first-round picks and the other one being a very high-price free agent. For this team to work at all and to have success, you have to look at those three guys and just put them out of your mind and just be like, that's finished. It's fixed. It's solved. They got the problem. It's done. And then you can go, okay, all these guys we were trying to fit into all these weird places last year, now there's only 2 spots, and there's about 6 of them, and they're all going to battle it out to see who earns the job. And that, to me, is a much better spot to be in than it was last year by a large margin.
Because it felt like you had like 5 spots like that last year.
I mean, I feel very.
A couple of years ago, when there was like Isaiah Wilson, Dennis Kelly, David Questenberry, there were camp battles for right tackle, but I feel like this is a little bit different. Because first up, Bill Callahan makes it just a little bit different. But I also feel like the players that they have battling out for these spots are better than the quality of players they had battling out for the spots, even when NPF was a rookie and he beat out Dylan Radins for that spot. People forget that he was in a battle with Dylan Radins and Dylan Radins lost.
Yep.
So, but I do think that Dylan Radins' better fit is that guard. They also agree with that. The problem is he may not be the best guard available. Who knows? We'll see. But it'll be interesting to see, like, whoever wins these battles, unless it's given to somebody. Like, if it's given to NPF and he misses like 17 practices this offseason, he just gets it. Like, okay, I think I'm out on that. Like, I don't think that's for all guys, he's got to get to practice. But I think for the most part, they're going to put out the best 5 that is also the right 5. Like, sometimes people just put out the right 5 and it's really not the best 5 for whatever reason. But you're putting the most talented players out there, and I am all aboard that. Like, if Bill Callahan at the end of the year says, we've seen all the tape, we've seen the games, and it is Sadiq Charles and John Ojukwu are your right guard and your right tackle, respectively. Okay, I'm in. Let's ride. Let's row. Let's do it.
Let's see. And again, trust in Bill, we trust. So it's no longer in J-Rob, we trust. Other than that, I did not really watch the defensive line at all. I didn't get a chance to see them because during individual drills, I was all over the receivers and the tight ends and the quarterbacks. So I didn't really see the defensive line much at all. Obviously they're not out there on 7-on-7. And because Simmons and Sweat weren't there, it was very much, or not out that day, at least, and Simmons wasn't even around, not even in town. What's interesting is the defensive line is just hard to get a feel for. So I'm curious your perspective on the edge rushers and why you think do you think they like them a little bit more?
Well, Rashad Weaver, man, talk about a body transformation. He looks like an entirely different player out there. I mean, listen, it's just one clip. But first off, his body type has just changed. It looks like he's in
thinner.
shape. And he's way thinner, it feels like. But it also has provided him more speed. He looked really fast in the drill that Jim Wyatt shown. And was not expecting that to be Rashad Weaver. Like, if you just covered up the number and told me to guess who that player was, I'd have said like Jalen Harrell, Caleb Murphy, because I mean he was that fast. Like, I was shocked it was Rashad Weaver, and I'm wondering because they also talked about Arden Key. Brian Callahan talked about Arden Key being the most vocal guy that he's had in the locker room so far, that he thinks is in the locker room so far. They asked him that on Bustin' with the Boys. Who's the most vocal guy? Who's the guy that has the most personality? And it's Arden Key. To no one's surprise, if followed Arden Key last year. I mean, that's probably it. But I kind of think that I think it's going to be a heavy rotation of Rashad Weaver, Arden Key. And maybe, just maybe, because I was looking at the stats the other day.
Oh, and by the way, Landry wasn't out there either. So
right. I was looking at the stats the other day about Rashad Weaver because I thought it was interesting. Last year, 2 years ago, he was used on 414 pass rushing snaps. So in 2022, his second year as a pro, 414 pass rushing snaps. That nets you 5 sacks and 34 pressures. Okay, not great, but it was a very good production for a 4th-round edge rusher that you got in the in year 2, who only played 12 total snaps last year, or his rookie year, like 12 total.
That's wild.
And last year, there were some issues off the field. He kind of got in the doghouse because last year he went from 414 pass rushing snaps to 130.
That's wild.
That is a wild drop. And,
I mean, like I knew he wasn't used, but.
Right, but that's a wild drop, right? And injuries play into that, but they use a lot of Arden Key. And maybe you could argue they shouldn't have used that much Arden Key last year. And they should have rotated Rashad Weaver. They should have put in Travis Gibson, who was a lot better, I thought, than people gave him credit for on this coaching staff. But that was that they just went Harold Landry, Arden Key, and that was it. And like you were lucky to get into a game if you were Rashad Weaver. I kind of think that we're going to see like almost a split rotation between Rashad Weaver and Arden Key. And I think they're fine with that, with Jalen Harrell in the back. They know Harold Landry can go the distance, and he's coming off. He'll be a year removed from his ACL and played pretty much well all year last year. I don't know. I'm interested to see. Like I feel like they're testing stuff at linebacker and safety, but I feel like they're comfortable at edge. If that makes sense. I don't agree that you should be comfortable at edge, but I kind of feel like they are.
Well, and I'll watch your boy. You've been very big on Khalid Duke as well.
I want to know if he's with the linebackers or the edge rushers.
I'll make sure that's on the notes to make sure to check next time. And then Sebastian Joseph Day is a solid looking player too. Like he's built pretty well. So I think, and he's bigger than I expected. I know he's listed at 6'4", 310, but he's built like a professional. Some of these guys that are young, they're rookies, UDFAs, like they've got to build their bodies up to become professionals. Like a Nick Vanette's a perfect example. Like a UDFA tight end standing next to Nick Vanette. Well, one guy looks like a professional athlete because he's been around forever, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're more talented. You can just tell when a guy is like putting in the work has been put in for years to build up an NFL body. And I think Sebastian Joseph Days, I think he looks more solid than I expected. How about that? It
was really interesting. Busted with the Boys. I think it was Busted with the Boys. Brian Callahan said something about, when you got they were talking about the defense, and when you got Jeffrey Simmons and you got Tavondre Sweat up the middle, then you have Sebastian Joseph Day next. It was kind of like, okay, 3-4. It's kind of what you're saying there. Now, unless they mean that they're going to rotate Sebastian Joseph Day and Tavondre Sweat out on certain situations. But we forget that if you got Tavondre Sweat and you have Jeffrey Simmons and you put Sebastian Joseph Day on the line, that's a pretty formidable three-man front that really can change a lot for the rest of the defense. And then you talk about the 3 corners, right? So
Yep.
I don't know. Like, I'm feeling pretty good. Like, I know I was freaking out about linebacker, and I'm still kind of like, I don't like the process. I'm very scared at linebacker, but I'm not as scared about safety. And I'm starting to slowly become more and more comfortable with the edge group.
Okay.
But I'm still like, we need some help on the linebacker spot. And we definitely need help in safety.
I cannot wait. So I cannot wait to see what the team looks like once they get to like full on camp, because I think there's a lot of reasons to be excited. I still don't know how good the team is going to be. I still think that I still think pumping the brakes on expectations is the right thing to do. Because I think there's some glaring holes, but I think there's also some things that they've done.
The expectations for one.
I tend to agree.
That's what fans should do. Let them exceed it. Don't put high expectations on there, and it will be hard because as soon as training camp gets rolling and all the other veterans start popping up, it's going to be really, really hard because people staff is so likable, it's so fresh, it's so new.
Everybody loves new.
Keep low expectations and let them exceed them. And if they don't meet them, you can't be disappointed.
I also think like it's not just new pieces and new places. It's also people doing things for the first time. Brian Callahan, Denard Wilson, Will Levis, like they're all doing. It's like it's the opposite of Bill Callahan. Bill Callahan has all the experience in the world. Brian, Denard, like all these guys, they're doing this thing for the first time. So I just think some patience is probably smart. But I am excited to watch the summer progression. I'm excited to see what players look like as the summer goes along. And obviously, I think there's a lot to be excited about. There's a lot to be hopeful for. But I agree. I would come into it with lowering expectations in order to maybe be pleasantly surprised. I think that's how I would approach it. So otherwise, Sinkers Beverages, Kingston Group, really appreciate you guys. You got Paul Karski coming up on his YouTube page coming up immediately after this, so go check him out. As well, you got stackintheinbox.com, football and other F words as well, so make sure you check out those shows and website from Zach. And yes, Stoney, the John Ojukwu Hive is alive and well. It is alive and well.
Break up the John Ojukwu Film Friday.
For now. Is what I'm going to say to Stoney. Otherwise, have a great Memorial Day, everybody. If you need to buy some beer, Sinkers Beverages. If you're running out of beer this weekend, just go into that little cellular telephonics device you have and search on Uber Eats for Sinkers Beverages, and they'll deliver the booze directly to your Memorial Day party.
Hey, they drive so you can drink.
Bingo. There you go. Be smart this weekend, everybody. We will not have a show on Monday. Enjoy your Memorial Day weekend and your Memorial Day holiday as well. For Zach, I am Braden. Thank you guys all for listening. Give us a subscription. Give us a little thumbs up there and share the product wherever you listen to and consume the show. We do appreciate you guys. Kingston Group, Sinkers Beverages. Zach, I'm Braden. Thank you all for listening. Have a great Memorial Day weekend, everybody. We'll talk to you guys next week.